Hello, and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, the podcast dedicated to addressing men's mental health issues and providing practical solutions. I'm joined by my friend Jason, who, through years of professional and personal experiences, including trauma and recovery, as well as 17 years of being a licensed therapist, in my journey being profoundly shaped by the tragic loss of my son, we are here to share what we have learned and continue to discover along the way. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jason, so glad to see you today.
Yeah, man. Happy Tuesday.
All right, so today we're going to talk on kind of what we're all dealing with, and when I say dealing with, the external and internal forces that are going on constantly around us, whether we're stopping to recognize them or not. And I believe that in discussing these, it'll help us recognize them, it'll help us identify them, it'll help us focus on them a little better, and it can give us maybe some understanding, which then can lead to relief. So Jason and I are going to just kick it off and see where the conversation goes on the topic, but whether it's our jobs, whether it's relationships, whether it's affiliations with groups, whatever said groups may be, all the things that we do in our lives tend to have a stressful portion to them, relationships specifically. And I don't just mean spouse, partner, etc., but just friends. You and I, there's a dynamic to the relationship. There's work to the relationship. There's things that I can control in the relationship and things I cannot control in the relationship. So could you just kind of, I guess, start with, are there controllables and uncontrollables? Are there internal and external forces? What are we dealing with that we're not even paying attention to? Beyond the obvious.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Beyond the obvious.
it's a good question. Man, I guess before you and I got on, when we were texting back and forth, you say to me, I don't really have a topic so much, man. There's been a lot going on here. So I'm a little scattered. I don't mean to share your business, but that right. And I said back to you, yeah, there's a lot going on here too. It's been a pretty intense couple days. And then we had a conversation about a friend who's struggling, right? And who goes to a space in our culture which is supposed to sort of have some wisdom, right? Some answers, like the psychiatric space,
Seeking help.
Yeah, seeking help. And so that's one of the spaces we go to in this country. I mean, I guess whatever around the world, but psychiatrists and medications and such. But anyway, so we were talking about how I don't know, certain intensity in our life, and for one, what is it that's happening? Um, yeah, and then what does it mean to cope? Where do we go? I mean, you mentioned this culture for one, specifically for men. Think about the layers of challenges associated with our just acknowledging our struggle for one, and then sharing it honestly with another person, especially another man, right? Um, think about how challenging that is, just to get a little support in our life. So go ahead.
And is that challenge? So let's just use that as an example, because um, it seems simple, but as I sit here and think about all the different layers that go with that challenge, I think it would be a good exercise to identify those, as simple as, hey man, I'm not feeling so good, I need to go get some help.
Yeah,
That's simple. And then what goes with that
yeah,
as a dude in the US?
yeah. But unfortunately, that's not that simple.
No,
It
it's not simple, but it
right.
should be.
Yeah. I mean, it
But
would be
let's
a lot
explain why
different if it was.
sure. And I and and I think identifying those things will make it clear to the listening audience
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
talking about when we talk about the things, the
yeah,
complexity of
yeah,
what
yeah,
seems
yeah,
to be and what should be
yeah,
the
yeah,
simplest thing.
yeah. And let's sort of start from I guess maybe defining a certain quality of the problem, right? Like in a general way. So let me. I pulled up some numbers for one, right?
Okay.
As it relates to this country, like things like 20% of adults have anxiety disorders. 32% of teenagers experience what's classified as anxiety disorders by the age of 6. Um, 15 million adults have a substance use disorder. 9 million. These are all, and you can imagine all these numbers are low, to be honest. Uh, the numbers for adolescence and anxiety and depression are skyrocketing. They're skyrocketing in adults. Um, there's more people on psychotropic medications now than in any other time in history by far. Some people might suggest that access to care is getting more more affordable, more, and there's some truth to that, obviously.
And we've learned more. I know that
Yeah,
we're going to dive into this, and it's going to counter this statement. But the more we learn about medications, the more we're going to distribute them. Therefore, the more people are going to be on them. So that's the devil's advocate to that. But the point still remains: the skyrocketing numbers for individuals who are not even seeking help, but reporting that they have anxiety disorders.
yeah. Well, I mean, you can look at any really any sort of statistic as it relates to mental health or substance abuse or physical health. And you'll find numbers that are alarming, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, suicide rates and
suicide rate, 60+% of the population have chronic illness, chronic disease, 50% of the population is obese. I don't. That's a crazy number of adolescents now that have fatty liver tissue disease. Half the country's has pre-diabetic conditions. Yet we're off track. So it poses some questions, right? You and I are talking about guys dealing. So I'm a lover of questions, right?
mm,
And and these are questions one can just ask themselves, even as a grown person. How well do they know themselves? How well do they know their triggers? Have they ever thought about masculine energy, feminine energy? What are some of the characteristics of a mature masculine man with integrity? How do we get there? How does it happen? Do you know what are some of the basics of a human relationship? How does that work? Right? I mean, just questions that we don't generally approach.
and not only do we not approach them out of, I would say, in my case, ignorance,
Yeah,
but also societal, whatever the fuck it is, that would make that a those taboo questions. And they're not.
yeah,
They're not weak. They're strengthening questions, and maybe it's goes to the adage of fear of something different, and so we attack it vitriolly with however we do so. So in the instance we would be talking about now, you say those things, and man, I'm not gonna think about that shit. That's fucking stupid. Feminine energy. I'm a dude. I'm not trying to. Maybe that's where that transgender shit's coming from. That type of attitude. And I could probably just diving back into historical me. It is like snuffs it out right there. In there, I want to bring that up because there's a first hurdle,
yeah.
and it's a
It's a
big one.
form of contempt prior to investigation. The way that I would relate to that is it's very challenging to transcend cultural conditioning. Um, and so to get to a place where one has more clarity, what it means, what is energy, like how does that work in our system, and just to describe something as a masculine and feminine energy doesn't, right? Like, so why would that be an issue with, right? I mean, they're just real general questions, but it's a form of contempt prior to investigation. It's just that um, uh, being able to get beyond what we were what we were taught, right, is exceedingly challenging, you could say. So yeah, it's just like contempt prior to investigation. Um, And all that means, it really, I can say it in a different way. You can just talk about feeling and feeling, and so feeling and energy are synonymous. They're the same. It's the same thing. You can just describe feeling as a form of feminine energy. So it's just a way of talking about a thing.
But again, it's a layer of hurdle
Yeah, it
that
is.
challenges one. And, I feel like we're in a society again, something I
Yeah,
can look in the mirror and tell myself we're in a
yeah.
society that if it ain't easy, we ain't doing it.
Well, in reality, I would say the truth is if a person, if a being was in that level or state of consciousness, right? It's not likely that I would be spending a lot of time around them anyway.
Hmm.
So to be the truth is, I don't, I mean, what is it that makes a person start questioning things and grow? I mean, usually it's when things get bad enough that we start asking deeper questions. So, man, if a person actually said to me, "Well, what are you talking about, feminine?" I would probably be walking in the other direction anyway. No
Already
offense,
started.
no judgment or
Right.
anything, right? It's just we're at
Not on the
different.
same page.
We're just different levels of consciousness, man. We're just in different places. It's okay. No
Hmm.
judgment. You know, I uh, I invest my energy in general in people that are looking for for deeper answers.
Hmm.
You know, um, and so I was just sort of pointing to, even as we talk about these things, men dealing with feelings and right, and feelings in general, and
Hmm.
the role of men and the role of men in relationship, and right, and all these things, and what it means to feel like taking care of everybody, like how heavy that can actually be,
Hmm.
how heavy duty can actually feel, how heavy it can actually feel, right? Uh, Duty and responsibility. Anyway, these are just things that we don't often think about or give much attention, right?
And they're
Um,
helpful to give attention and to think about.
I would say it's necessary. It
Right.
depends on, like, I mean, if your life currently involves an endless an endless hamster wheel of anxiety, thinking about the future, the past is coming up, the future is coming up, right?
Hmm.
Um, um, then what I would suggest is, yeah, that there's something that needs your attention and that you're just not giving it, and that's going to mean that you're gonna have to really start to be still and allow yourself to experience some things that you haven't been able to allow so far, right? So I would suggest that if a person wanted more lightness in their experience in life, to feel lighter, right, then the only way that that's possible is to start asking these kinds of questions. That's it,
Hmm.
and to start giving their life, their experience, a certain kind of attention that they're not used to giving it. And that was my story for 40 years. I mean, this life, this heart, this literal sensitive being just didn't receive my attention all of my life. And I also experienced this cultural phenomenon where everything outside of me looked good. There was a wife and a condo and right and a job and good
Checking
money.
all the boxes.
Yeah, man, right. But there was something missing. It's all cliche. We're familiar with these stories. We're just less familiar with the reality of it in our own life.
Hmm.
And actually, what we think in life when we get in these desperate sort of spaces that we need something. We're missing something. We got to get it. Right? Nah, it's just something. Our heart needs attention. We need to slow down. Something needs our attention, right? So, um, so I experienced the same thing, and then that dissatisfaction or disillusionment, it just got worse and worse and worse, and things began to go on top of it to cover it up, to cover up that hole, that missing, right? You know what I mean? And then it all stopped working.
And I'd
You
like
know?
to plug in. I think I'd like to plug in where, and I think a lot of us choose that route. Not
Yeah,
not necessarily as
it's
far,
very, very
but
common. Yeah.
it's definitely a slippery slope too. There are other things that people do that are equally as detrimental and maybe a little more acceptable. I think if it's just alcohol, it's acceptable, right? Like everybody's drinking.
Yeah.
If it's food,
Yeah.
and you stated a obesity rate, if it's working out too much or overdoing something, it's anything you're overdoing. We're attempting to hide or fill a void with something that is not what goes there, and it doesn't really fill it.
Yep. It's not
And,
shaped in the way it needs to be shaped.
right, and
You know.
so we stay on that cycle, and so
Yeah.
I just want to throw it in. Well, that's not me. I don't do that. Yeah, but you still do other stupid shit that you
We
shouldn't
all
be
do
doing.
it in a
Yeah,
degree. It's
in a certain
yeah.
one way or the other.
Yeah. So, and what I mean by that, what I'm saying is, we all have mechanisms that help us not be here, that help us not experience what's going on. You could call it distraction or whatever. It helps us not be here and experience what's actually happening.
Hence it being a symptom of whatever
Avoidance,
of the issue.
it's resistance and avoidance is the main contributors to our suffering. Not pain, that's unavoidable, but suffering is its own psychological, emotional, spiritual condition. So now, and I'll just say it plainly, because that's the place in my life that I'm in, right? Just honest expression. So I was born into this culture, okay? That I'm an individual with a bunch of other individuals, and there's limited resources, and everybody's out trying to get theirs, and it's a dog eat dog world, right? And my experience was very, very painful and very frightening, and very it felt very separating, and everybody was fighting and not getting along, and it's just very, very strange. It's been a very strange experience here. You follow? And a part of that experience culturally is that everybody that I experienced, now I wouldn't have been able to articulate it this way until I got older, but everybody was what is called, or how they referred to it, as agnostic or atheistic. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, bro. So, because what I discovered, that my pain, my longing, my desperation, it was simply because I came into a culture and in a space that told me there was no God. In a way, it showed me that. It showed me that with its materialistic greed, right? And its divorce rates, and its anxiety rates, and its depression rates. It showed me that. That's what it showed me. But yet it told me that if I can't cope with it, I have a problem. But that's what it showed me, that it was sick, and it was frightening, and it lacked God. That's literally what the experience was. But I wouldn't have been able to articulate it that way. When I use the word God, I'm referring to the creative intelligence responsible for everything we see. That's all.
A creator.
The creative intelligence that is responsible for everything we experience. The idea that you can draw that on a book is kindergarten. That you can draw draw a stick. I'm being a little bit.
Yeah, you're taking it to another level, but when you're discussing the individual who is responsible for trees and mushrooms that run under the ground all the way, and we really don't even know what's going on under the ground, 100%. But we got an idea. I think
The fact that we referred to it as an individual is a product of cultural conditioning
or lack of understanding, and
Yeah.
and so this.
So
thing,
my point to all that was that the deeper dissatisfaction was related to the need for the transcendent, sacred, the you know what I'm saying? And I didn't know that point of contact for all of us walking around is in here. I didn't know that. Again, right? Because I was told that the source of my well-being and everything that I needed was all out here. I needed to acquire it, right? Well, that was incorrect. It's just an incorrect model. It's an incorrect part of the program. It's just off.
Right. So, and I want to come back to that. I may need to jot a note on it, but the reason I wanted to emphasize the statement that trying to put a deity in a book and drawing stick figures is kindergarten is because it is important. I find it important.
Please.
And the reason, and I also might want to make sure that anybody listening doesn't take offense or misunderstand what's being stated. And to my understanding, I believe and agree that it is kindergarten because we can't fathom an entity or whatever it is that can create gravity.
Conceptualization.
It can create gravity and creates infinite space and all. We can't comprehend it. And we think anybody has ever put it in a book.
That's what I'm suggesting. So I have deep love for all expressions and all books and all, every attempt to describe the indescribable.
Mm-hmm.
Every expression of a human's relationship with the divine. I love it. It doesn't matter what color, shape, size, what corner of the planet it does. I'm drawn to it, I'm just drawn to it. And so our culture is just, we happen to be born in a place and in a space that is as far away from the truth of our place in this universe, the beauty of our existence, period. Just the fact that we exist. That is it. Like, literally, we are one of 7 billion plus beings walking around in a fucking cosmos of trillions and trillions of insane. And right here is our point of contact with it all. Right in here. This awake, conscious being experiencing it all. You understand? So, so it makes logical sense. We should be the most studied thing we know. If we
being ourselves.
If we are the point of contact with it all, that's where we should be looking.
Mm-hmm.
We experience the world right here, in here, through our body, through the senses. You understand? So it's all right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Now, but again, so our troubles, they're not satisfied materially. That's not what the longing, the dissatisfaction, the fear. It's not what it's about.
But that's been plugged in as if it is.
Yes.
I have a theory for that. I mean, they need workers, so we're going to
listen, man. The world wouldn't be able to be shaped in the way that it was. Listen, to be honest, if we were able to feel the things that actually are happening in the world, then they wouldn't be able to exist, like homelessness and things like that. Right? It would be more difficult for us to actually experience that and tolerate it inside. What happens to the least of us happens to me. I think I've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I bet many that even anyway. But I think that statement's true. But let me say it differently. That's a statement of truth. But we wouldn't even understand that sometimes our feelings and the denseness and the heaviness we experience is because those things exist in the world. We've been convinced that we're separate. It's all connected. But anyway, so men in this culture, like everybody else, have layers upon layers of misinformation and that get in the way of healing and connecting and expressing our full source of power and strength and integrity and agency and sovereignty,
Yeah, I totally know. And I think that it's difficult to understand for, until you get to what I think there's a threshold, and it's not like an obvious, once you hit the sixth rung on the ladder, then you understand. But there is a transition I guess I'm still in the transition period because I'll slip in and out of and have to stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on a second. This is what's going on here.
Realign.
This is not.
That's ongoing. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I'm seeing. But you can stop and see it, and then you can
You know
identify
what?
it.
There's clarity. You have been enlightened as to the actual expression of fear or shame or some smallness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like insecurity, smallness, fear, or envy, whatever it is, man. Whatever judgment, all those things that happen that that many of us aren't even really aware are happening. That actually cause denseness in our system. Does that resonate? What I'm saying? Using
Yeah, it
those
does,
words.
and I
Yeah.
think just the ability to identify,
Yeah.
and I think it all starts with what you're saying is to stop and begin to learn
Be still.
oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once we begin to learn ourselves, then we can identify A, that something is off,
Yeah.
B, what it is,
Yeah.
C, how do
Yeah.
we in ourselves deal with that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And
And
what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with the mind, movement, this movement. We're dealing with the body, these feelings, these energies, right? These internal processes and mechanisms that are working, right? That we don't give attention to
and we
because the
get
world has our attention out here.
and we haven't given attention to it, for 40,
Yeah.
it was 42 years, I
Yeah.
guess. I didn't really pay attention to it.
41 here.
And so you've got 41 years of stacking.
Have it. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
if
Momentum.
very little besides eating and drinking can we really look back and say I've been doing this my whole life and
Yeah. That's a good
think I
point.
got to clean this mess up, and that can be intimidating, and I understand that, and maybe that's why you got to get to your rock bottom, to say
Often.
fuck it, I'm going to deal with this.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit how big of a mountain
Yeah.
it is. I'm going to climb this.
But I'll say it differently. It generally works something like this. What I'm doing isn't working. And and then generally we start to be open to different ideas. Because while we're in it, when we're in that quote unquote bottom, at least my experience in there was like, I really wanted to get out. Right? Like, I really wanted to. You understand? Like, I really wanted to be free, you know? And I would just have these plans and like, oh, this is what I would just really strategize and think I had a good hold on what I was going to do the next day to really get some momentum, and then it just would continue to happen. It just the next day became the next day, became the next day, became the next day. I just didn't know what was going on, right? Like, I didn't know that what was needed was for me to say, okay, I give up. I don't know what's going on. I need some help, and I need to take some suggestions. I need to listen. I need to actually take action when suggestions come.
And I think that's identifiable when we're looking, say we're on the outside looking in, so we were able to just kind of draw back at 30,000 feet and look at others and ourselves at the same time and see, we see in others, oh, well, yeah, well, he just keeps waking up and making the same bad decisions. No shit, that's what we're all doing. We all keep getting up and making the same bad decisions. I
It's just
include myself.
a lack of awareness is all
So
it
a lot of
ever
times,
is.
well, it's a lack of awareness sometimes. Sometimes it's like you said, it never ends, and so it's tiring, and it's easier to not do things than it is to
I'm
do
saying
them
what
and be
perpetuates it is a
Yeah.
lack of awareness.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, it's just what continues the habit. It's just
It-
that we don't see it. We don't know what's going on.
and we can get back to them. I think that, I look at my global health, not just and if I drink a soda, well, then I want to drink another soda.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to drink soda for this week or this month or whatever. And it's like, no, you keep making the same bad decision. And I mean, if that was cocaine or heroin or something like that, it'd be even more obvious.
Different. Yeah.
But it's the same. It's
Yeah.
the same amount of,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean when we continue to get up and
Yeah.
slog through
Yeah,
and
you got it.
not do what we've been instructed either by our
Yeah.
bosses or friends or people trying to help us. We just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And it's easier for us to look at others and say, well, of course that individual's in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Look at what they're doing. But it's
Yeah.
hard to look in the mirror and say,
It's hard, I know. Hey, but you sort of mentioned things that brought up words that are also words I don't think we have very a lot of familiarity with or a relationship with, like willpower,
yeah,
discipline.
discipline.
We don't, yeah, we just don't have a familiarity with what that actually means internally. How does that work? How do you embody these concepts? They're not things we spend a lot of time thinking about. You know?
Well, but we do. We just don't apply them to self. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're
when you
saying.
think, because you've got so many individuals who are like, what are you talking about?
I
I'm
hear
very
you.
disciplined. I get up
I
at
hear
6 a.m. every morning. I do a workout routine. I go to work. I'm a dedicated employee. But they are being disciplined,
you.
but not
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily on the right or all the right things. I don't want to say it's not good to be
yeah,
disciplined in your work, but if we applied the same, so when we see ourselves, when we look at our shining spots, which I encourage everybody to do, because we can get down on ourselves. We get to focusing on the negative things because that's what needs to be fixed. The fixed things don't need to be fixed. We don't need to pay them attention. And then when we don't pay attention, then we start to get down on ourselves because we're just looking at the negative shit. So we do need to look at the positive. So when we look at the shiny spots in our lives, we'll look over here. I'm doing really well. All right, well, look at that spot. And why are you doing well? You're because you're showing willpower and you're showing discipline to show up every day, to give your best, to do your best, to pay attention when you're in that role, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we got to draw that back and apply it at every step, especially. And I think we start, and this is where I believe, as a society for sure. I don't know worldwide; it may be the same thing, but I think where we really fuck up is that's where we should start. Is doing all that in self, for self, and then that will spread its tentacles all the way through our lives, and it'll be in place for our relationships, for our work, for our mission, for all of that. And I think it's so hard because again, we neglect it for 40 years. So we've got all this shit added up that we got to take care of. And to just paint a quick picture, we got a house we got to pay for, we got a spouse and kids and cars and insurances and vacations and all this shit's got to be paid for. Well, how do I pay for it? Well, I've lined myself up to make the most doing this. And so I go do that. And I can't stop to work on me. If I stop, then I can't get all these things. And you can. Changes are definitely needed, and you have to focus on those changes. But it's a very I guess because I was like you were saying, I was at that point where I didn't give a shit what it was going to take,
yeah.
and so I never even looked at the whole picture.
Yeah, you just started walking.
My ignorance was bliss.
It's a
Because
blessing. Yeah.
yeah, it was a blessing, because when you stop and think about all the things, like, it
Yeah.
seems daunting and overwhelming, but then again, once you've done a bunch of work,
Yeah.
those are just like the shit that's added up in the negative. The shit adds up on the positive, and it becomes part of who
Yeah.
you are, and it's routine.
And a good way to think about it is to, I think you would relate to this statement. It's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that relatable?
All of it.
Right. So like as we start to dive inside and start to acknowledge and start to not avoid and not suppress, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you start to do it, right? What you find is that, it's not what I thought it was. It's nothing like I thought it was going to be. Like that fear and that it's not. It was completely unwarranted. It's uncomfortable. It's painful, right? It can be brutal, but the rewards are worth it,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Oh,
It's
absolutely.
worth it. Um, so it's not what you think it is, right? Uh, but again, think about it, right? Think about, so if a person, I mean, I know plenty of people that I don't. I mean, let's just say, knowing them the way that I know them, I wouldn't say that they were contented per se, right? But like they're fine, I would say. I mean, they get a nice house, a Tahoe, and man, and it's right and financially fine, for now. I mean, I guess whoever really knows, but so it's all fine, whatever. And So it's not like I wouldn't walk into the house and say, "Hey, sorry, you're missing something." Like
Mm-hmm.
there's some deeper stuff you can be having access to. That's what. But if a person, let's say a person was in that same space and they just weren't okay, and they didn't really know why. It didn't make sense to them. It doesn't make sense why they're not okay. In a way, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if it was confusing to them, and then they came to me and said, "I'm not sure what's," or they came to you and said, then we would say, "Hey, there's some information we weren't given as we were growing up and when we came in, and there's some things that if we learn how to do them, it will change our whole fucking life.
Mm-hmm.
It can transform the whole fucking experience." Um, that's what we would say, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
And it's not some I hate to say it's not some mystical thing because there may be some of that involved, but there's really very applicable things that we discuss that you apply to self, and it shit you already know how to do. You just don't do it, and it's because you don't know. Like you said,
yeah,
there's just information we weren't given,
yeah,
and so yeah, I think that there, without even getting to all the energy that's combined and all that, because I know it's not that I disagree with any of it. I've been enlightened by tons of it, but when one is just beginning, it's like
yeah.
take baby steps, just take some baby steps and understand there's a lot going on.
Start somewhere, yeah.
And just start
So now, and what
walking.
I would suggest, so and here's a really difficult part for me, and where I'm at 18 years in the profession, and then 46 years on this earth, and seeing what I've seen, experience what I've experienced, right? And what I would say, okay, and it's a really it's so difficult to even wrap your head around. It just won't make sense to people, right? I think it will eventually with time, possibly even in the next few years. But the classification system, the diagnoses, like, listen, it's all off. The psychiatric profession, pharmaceutical industry, it's all off. The truth is we've been led astray. That's the truth. Now, the people that are in the profession don't know that. It's not a, you know what I mean? But it is
If
a
they do, they're not free
mess.
to
It's a
express it.
mess. Yeah. So let's just say, yeah, for people that find themselves in the system, let's just take the psychiatric system, and I'm working with them. Then we talk a lot about how long the withdrawal symptoms can actually be. They can actually be for a few months. But if you have information, if you have right around what's actually going on, then even though it's insane, anyway, even though it's insanely uncomfortable, it can be obviously you can be comforted by knowing that it's, I guess you could say, normal. It's to be expected. It's the way that it works. People don't talk about withdrawal symptoms when you go into when you're going into a psychiatrist. They don't use that language. They don't. That's not a language that's typically used in that space. Anyway, so the whole profession, the whole sphere lacks wisdom, and it's off. It's off course. And so the reality is, people going into that sphere, the vast majority of people that are going into that sphere and getting placed on medication have now sort of been caught in a spider web. And the first sort of point is, well, anyway, I'm being really pretty careful here, but um, sometimes you have to, yeah, you just have to like work your way out of the spider web. Okay. I would say that one of the most significant parts of my story is getting caught in the opiate spider web, right? Which is, you could say, a gift from the pharmaceutical industry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is not a absolving of any responsibility or anything. It's not a anyway. But so that industry is corrupted. Period. So it's really about knowing where to go. So for anybody that's struggling, right? Then what I would be suggesting is go to therapy. Go and be looking for specific things. Go to people that have some familiarity with somatics, body. They literally list it in their listings on Psychology Today or whatnot. And that's what I encourage people to do. Go and sit with somebody that can help you be more still. That can help you understand what's happening in your body and help you find some agency and calm things down. That's where I would be going.
Well, but you say that on the heels of saying that you go to these individuals and they suggest medication and that gets you caught in a web.
So I would be suggesting to people not to go into the sphere of psychiatry. So I would be saying go sit with a person, be with them, learn about the body, learn about the nervous system. Do you understand what I mean? Learn about attachment. I mean, like go and talk about things, right? Learn how to be honest. Learn how to, right? Start doing that work.
I just wanted you to clear that up. I know.
Yeah, thank you.
But if somebody who's, I try to think on the level.
No, I don't encourage individuals to go in that direction unless it is, you could say, the last resort, very last resort. And it's always done with an intention on coming off as fast as one can. That's just my experience. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's how everybody should live their life, but that's, if people come and work with me, that's what's happening.
It's got, it falls right in line with, there's, I know how I can lose weight. I can stop putting certain things in my mouth and I can start moving my body more.
Yeah, it helps.
Okay. That's how I can lose weight.
Yeah, it is.
But there's constantly looking for an easier way to do it because I like soda or I like cake or I like ice cream. I mean, I love all those fucking things.
We're being too productive. We don't have time.
Yeah, I don't have time. Yeah.
So we do too.
Personally, it's a discipline issue. I don't want to exercise the discipline when I really want something that I know is not good for me. I don't want to have to exercise that discipline and tell myself no.
Yeah.
So well, how can I get around that?
Yeah. Well, and here's how I think about it. I think about it like this: we're born into the world. It's how I picture a human until it's not. We're born into the world. Now we have our eyes glued open. We can't even tell what's going on. We got a carrot hung out in front of us, and we're just mesmerized going after the carrot, right? And I swear, literally, all we need to do is stop and sit down and close our fucking eyes and take a breath, right? It's okay, right? But the world, all the people in it, all the messages coming to us say it's all out here. Mm-hmm. This is what it's about. It's all out here. And so the idea of learning how to delay gratification, what that even means, what that feels like, how to embody that, right? Again, it's a foreign concept.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, like when we use the word discipline, we would break it down into like numerous sort of categories, right? The ability to delay gratification, the radical orientation towards truth, right? The idea of balancing. I mean, right? So you could break it down in a variety of ways. But anyway, it's just things we don't typically think about.
We don't think about it, and they're so important. They're crucial.
Because we got a carrot out here. There's been a carrot that was stuck in front of our face, right? And it's shown to us all the time. Screens all the time.
Yeah, well, it's the stimulation.
This is what it looks like.
More and more.
Yeah, but so what we're seeing as we're growing is what it's supposed to look like. Does that make sense how I'm saying that?
Yeah, it's a stimulation to us.
Yeah.
That keeps us wanting to.
Yeah. And we're being shown through images on the screen, like how not to relate, really. I mean, anyway, I'm just saying. So for most of us, much of what we think about ourselves in the world, again, is a very, very sort of implanted,
distorted.
Yeah, it's a programming, to be honest.
Yeah, and it distorts
reality.
everything.
It distorts reality. Yeah,
I agree.
Right. Yeah.
Well, right on, man. I appreciate all that insight, and I think that that's all very. We could probably continue to talk about this for a couple more hours,
Yeah,
but that all that insight, and I think it boils down to that we've got to start focusing on us. We got to look in the mirror. We got to really spend time figuring out who we are. If we can't define these things, we don't even know what we want. If we don't know what we want, how can we get to it? I mean, it's just,
yeah,
I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to pack my bags and then I'm just going to walk out. Well, your vacation is probably going to suck for the
yeah,
majority of the time because
yeah,
you don't know where you're going. You're not probably going to get there because you didn't know where you were going. So it's just, we have to have an understanding of self so that we have an understanding of what we truly want and need. And then we can actually attack that with, um,
Think about
all that
this
we have.
just for a second. And yeah, I love the conversation. That I always appreciate the conversation, man. It's a good way to start the day, you know. But um, this is, I think you could simplify something, and this is pretty universal. This is right. So you could say, or I would challenge anybody. Challenge maybe not the right word, but if you're curious, um, just go and sit down. No phone, no TV. Sit down, comfortable, shut your eyes. Just breathe. See how comfortable that is. It's likely it's not very comfortable. And and you could say that a human being's ability to be still and focus their attention where they want to is a metric for how comfortable they are, how much they've dealt with their past, how much they understand the imagination and its influence in our life all
Mm-hmm.
the time, right? There's a whole lot of transformation that occurs in between not being able to be still and being able to be still for 20 or 30 minutes. That space in between is the space of transformation. Now, you can talk a lot about what's going to be a part of that in between and what's going to come up, right? Uh, and hopefully, you're sitting down with somebody that has some experience with it and can help guide and listen and ask good questions and such. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
that space, that is the space of transformation for us.
Yeah, I put that. I visualize that as an email inbox, and we got to go through all the messages and all the stuff in between one and the other before we can
Just,
open our email box and it'll be empty.
yeah,
And
you
it's going to
got
keep filling. Well, I get emails every morning. Well, no shit. Life happens every morning too.
every day,
Yeah, so we
all
got to
the
get in there and
time.
clean it out and
Yeah,
make sure. So,
yeah,
yeah, I get it. And I know it's transformational. It's hard work. It's not
yeah,
easy. Never ends. So, I can understand it's a daunting task for anybody that hasn't started yet. And it's just start walking.
yeah.
Don't
And
even
and
think
and
about,
find some other people to walk with.
and
Is
yeah,
what I
find
would suggest.
resources. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I agree. And thank you so much for listening. We know your time is the most valuable asset. We
yeah.
appreciate you giving it to us. We hope we brought value to your day. And until next time, we hope you have an awesome day.